Friendships, the relationships among individuals, they matter because at our essence, we start as a few men who come together then as brothers. There were 11 gentlemen that had an impact in the year 1801. And perhaps it is time that we reflect upon who comprised the 11 gentlemen. So for that, I would ask our Assistant Grand Historian, Brother B. Chris Ruli, 32nd degree, Knight Commander of the Court of Honor, if he would share some thoughts on this topic.
Sovereign Grand Commander, Most Worshipful Grand Master, illustrious brethren, guests, ladies, good afternoon. I've been invited by our Sovereign Grand Commander to briefly talk about the founders of our Supreme Council, the Mother Council of the world, and we often refer to them as the 11 gentlemen, these original founders. As I began to work on this speech, I couldn't help but find similarities between the story of the formation of our Supreme Council and the formation of the United States of America. As we all know, in about 5 weeks, Americans throughout the country and indeed across the world will actually celebrate the 250th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence. This is an important milestone in our country's history, just as this occasion here in Charleston provides us an opportunity to celebrate the 225th anniversary of our Supreme Council. Therefore, I'd like to share with you 3 of these observations to help us understand who these founders were and whence they came. First, the formation of our Supreme Council and our country are based on foundational documents. The American Republic rests on documents like the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and then later our United States Constitution. These documents define what it means to be an American, how our government functions, and the obligations of the government to its people. Likewise, our Supreme Council traces its authority to its own set of foundational documents. Several versions of what Scottish Rite Masons call the Grand Constitutions appeared in Charleston prior to the formation of our own Supreme Council in 1801. And what these documents attempted to do was to define what it meant to be a Scottish Rite Mason. It laid out which degrees that we were going to confer, and of course, it gave us the duties and obligations of our organization's leadership. And just as the Declaration of Independence announced a new country to the world, the founders of our Mother Council made their own declaration, which they called the Circular Throughout the Two Hemispheres, as illustrious Brother De Hoyos mentioned in his remarks. This document turns as illustrious De Hoyos mentioned, turned out to be the Supreme Council's first printed publication and announced to the fraternal world that on the 31st of May, 1801, the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree for the United States of America was opened by brothers John Mitchell, Frederick Dalco. And by the end of that year, the council's membership increased to 9. Later on, Masonic scholars, including Grand Commander Albert Pike and past librarian of the Supreme Council, Ray Baker Harris, were interested to learn more about these individuals. And so after extensive research, they added 2 names, and that total now jumped up from 9 to 11, the title that we know today. Along with Mitchell and Dalco, we include the following names as early founders: Alexander de Grasse, Israel de Lieben, Thomas Bartholomew Bowen, Abraham Alexander, John Baptiste Delhogue, Moses Clavelevi, Emmanuel de la Mota, James Moultrie, and Isaac Gould. So why is this first observation important? In short, it reminds us that in a civilized society, our institutions are governed by laws, which attempt to be just, fair, and equitable to all citizens, just as Scottish Rite Masons draft bylaws and statutes to govern our meetings. It reminds us that we are not governed by a foreign power or monarchy, and perhaps more importantly, that these rules can change and adapt with the times towards a more harmonious lodge of perfection and towards a more perfect union. My second observation: our understanding of the early years of the Supreme Council is limited, and we must always be careful to avoid Masonic myth-making. And if you're okay with Masonic myth-making, then I welcome you to my lodge in Alexandria, Virginia, where I can show you the hatchet that George Washington used to cut down the cherry tree. Like the early proceedings of the Continental Congress, much of what we know about our early Supreme Council is not based on printed transactions or proceedings of minutes, the things that we have now, but from surviving letters, from patents, from newspaper notices, from other supporting documents. In other words, our understanding of our history is greatly shaped by the material that survived. Our early founding fathers, for example, gathered in Philadelphia to conduct their business in secret. This was partly due out of necessity, as their actions were considered seditious to the British government. And indeed, signing the Declaration of Independence came with difficult consequences for many. Like the Continental Congress, Supreme Council meetings and deliberations varied based on who was in the room. The founders had to balance their own personal and private priorities with their interests. It is unlikely that they all attended every single session. We don't know much about what these early founders debated or discussed in session, with the exception of those letters that survived, those few printed materials, and of course the public records that historians like Dr. Mackey, Grand Commander Pike, Illustrious Harris, and I'm going to add Illustrious Art de Hoyos here, were able to preserve. Early Masonic ledgers often omitted debate and discussion entirely, focusing simply on who was present and the results of those votes. And unfortunately, our case, our own individual case, is exacerbated by the fact that citywide fires damaged the Supreme Council's headquarters on 2 separate occasions, and of course, Charleston suffered greatly during the American Civil War. Here's what Grand Commander Pike had to say on why my second observation is important. Quote, "Despite much that has survived, there remain many areas in our early history lacking definitive evidence. This being so, it is probably only natural and inevitable that personal theories, opinions, and speculation will be advanced by historians and writers to account for what is not positively known." My third and final observation, like the formation of our own country, our earliest Supreme Council was composed of a diverse group of 11 gentlemen of different ages, of different nationalities, of different religions, of different professions, and even their own social standing. In terms of their place of origins, Brother Mitchell, Bowen, and Alexander Dalco were likely, or certainly born in the British Isles, Ireland, and England. De Grasse, Delahogue, and Delmoda were born in France and the French Caribbean. Brother de Lieben was born in Bohemia, while Levy came from Poland. John Moultrie was born in South Carolina, while Brother Uld was born in Pennsylvania, but his parents originated from Europe. In terms of religion, 2 brothers were Roman Catholic, 2 were Episcopalian, 1 was Presbyterian, and at least 4 founders were Jewish. Imagine, in a time where Jewish candidates had difficulty joining a craft lodge, the Supreme Council and the Scottish Rite welcomed these brethren not only as brothers but as founders. In terms of profession, 3 individuals were physicians, 4 were merchants, 2 served in the military, and at least 2 had fathers with military backgrounds. 2 individuals were in the clergy, and 2 worked as printers and editors of newspapers. Our first Grand Commander, John Mitchell, served under George Washington in the Revolutionary War. De Grasse, he was the son of an admiral, French general, who ensured America's victory at Yorktown. Finally, at the time of formation of the Supreme Council, 5 of the 11 gentlemen were in their 30s or 40s. Can you believe that? Reverend Dalco and Dr. Uld were both 31 years old when they helped form the Supreme Council. There's hope for us all. 4 individuals were in their 50s, and 2 were in their early 60s. Each of these examples demonstrate this final and important point, that Scottish Rite Freemasonry has, since its formation, welcomed men from all walks of life, and through our initiatic ceremonies, brought curious and like-minded men together to improve ourselves, our families, and our communities. Our organization is fortunate to have such a rich history, and it reminds us that while we may be different, the Scottish Rite and Freemasonry in general can serve as an institution that can bring us together. My brethren, as I conclude my remarks, I wish to leave you with this following point. History is not perfect. Our subjects, the 11 gentlemen, were certainly far from perfect. Yet it is the job of the historian to provide our members with the best information possible, warts and all. Here's what we know. Since 1801, the Scottish Rite served as an institution that brings men together from all walks of life to serve one common cause and to empower our members to go beyond the limits of their perceived potential. Our history is woven into the fabric of the United States and through our founders and through future generations. My brethren, if human progress is going to be our cause, then we should strive to learn the lessons of the past 225 years so we can improve Scottish Rite Freemasonry for the next 225. Sergeant Grand Commander, I thank you for the opportunity to serve and provide these remarks.